folks, this video is going to talk about the lower class and some of the myths of poverty. Remember, with all of the classes, we were looking at several characteristics: their incomes, their jobs, their level of education, their children's education, percent of the population, their division of household labor, and the types of homes that they lived in, right? So let's go through this for the lower class. The lower class, we're going to talk about incomes. I'm going to say under 30,000, depending on, again, where they live. Remember that the lower class is subdivided into two groups: the working poor and the underclass. The working poor are going to be people who have jobs, but those jobs are not enough to get them out of poverty. Maybe they're food service preparers. Maybe they have part-time employment. Maybe they're maids or nannies. Maybe they have a minimum wage job in a retail as a cashier or in a restaurant as a server. The underclass, on the other hand, are people whose poverty tends to be more entrenched. They are often out of the labor force. They have a tenuous relationship with the labor force. They may have disability issues, mental health issues. They may have small children, and the money that they make from the job, the low-paying job that they got, would not make up for the cost of childcare. They may be in areas that are very, very economically depressed. Some very rural areas like Appalachia, where there are very few jobs. Some of our reservations for various Native American groups in the West, there are just very few jobs in some of those places. And so it's very difficult for people who don't have as much education and who live in those kind of environments to find jobs. It's very difficult for people with disabilities to find jobs, or people with small children, people who are experiencing extreme intergenerational poverty. And that's going to be the underclass. So again, the working poor have jobs. They're just not enough to get them out of poverty. And the underclass are people who are sort of permanently in a state of poverty and in many cases are unemployed. So what would we want to know about overall the lower class income? Again, I said below 30,000. I gave you a list of some of the jobs that they would have. Their percentage of the population, anywhere from 15 to 20%, depending on how we measure it. Right now, about 14% of Americans live below the poverty level. That's going to change dramatically with this global pandemic and many people losing their jobs, and the number of people in poverty is probably going to go up pretty dramatically. Some people who I'm classifying as lower class are not technically in poverty. But if you live in a place like San Francisco or a New York City and you make $30,000 a year, that's not going to be very easy to get by on that kind of a money in an environment where rent could be $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month for 2 bedrooms. You're not getting much for that. So I want you to understand that when we're talking about poverty, poverty is not adjusted for what region we're in. What kind of education would people in the lower class have? People in the lower class would tend to have high school or less. Some of them would be dropouts. Some of them may have more education, but because of some sort of disabling injury or some kind of other life circumstance, they are unable to work. Their children are going to go to public schools. They're going to go to public schools that probably are under-resourced, probably have a higher student-to-teacher ratio, older buildings that have problems with like the plumbing or the heating of the buildings. They are often not getting things like advanced placement classes or extracurricular opportunities. They may have outdated technology, outdated books, but for the most part, they're not getting a great public education. They may want their kids to go to college, but the low quality of their schooling combined with a lack of money to pay for it really limits the ability of these lower income kids to pursue a higher education. All right, so the next thing would be their homes. Many lower income people are living in public housing. They might be living in very small apartments. They might be living in a trailer park. They might be living in a much older home that might have problems with the plumbing, with lead paint or things like that. Some of them are going to be homeless. Some of them are going to have multiple roommates in a house or in an apartment. Some of them might be in a homeless shelter. Some of them could even be living out of their car, but their housing situation tends to be very unstable. In terms of their division of labor, the lower class is not tremendously caught up on the division of labor. Whoever's available to do the job is probably going to do it, which means that the kids are going to have a lot of responsibilities. And the mom's going to have a lot of responsibilities. If dad is there, he's going to have a lot of responsibilities as well. And they're all going to try to kind of work together to get these basic needs met. But they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle because they don't have the finances in many cases to get the things that they need. Whether it's just basic things like food and clothing and shelter, or other things that, maybe they do want to have a birthday party for their kid. Can they afford to have a birthday cake or those kind of things? They're not going to get a lot of luxuries.